Alberta Day and what it'll come to mean in this province?
Well, we became a province on September the 1st, 1905, and we had a huge party then, but never since. And that's unfortunate because I think Alberta is worth celebrating. Of course, many folks get together in ways big and small on Canada Day to celebrate our country. I think Alberta's worth celebrating. We're a unique place. As I say, we've created one of the most prosperous and generous societies in the world. Alberta's day's a way to, just have some fun, but also show some gratitude for the folks who've gone before us to build the province and celebrate everything that we are. So this is our first effort. I'm not expecting giant crowds because people aren't used to it yet. We've only had a few weeks to promote it, but if people are looking for some family-friendly activities on Saturday at Princess Island Park in Calgary and Edmonton, the legislature grounds, Brett Kissel will be headlining a great lineup of Alberta-based musical acts and family-friendly activities. So a good way to end out the summer, enjoy the long weekend, but also celebrate Alberta.
Yeah, and as you say, it's kind of interesting. Brett Kissel will be playing a show tomorrow afternoon in Calgary and then tomorrow evening in Edmonton, sort of the headliner. But, as you say, events taking place throughout the day and in a number of communities around the province. While I've got you, can I ask you a couple of questions about news of the day?
I have no doubt that you were going to do that anyway, Shaye. Go ahead.
I want to start with our Lieutenant Governor, Selma Lakhani, yesterday talking about the fact that she may not sign into law the Sovereignty Act. First of all, do you think that's an appropriate action by the Lieutenant Governor to speak about a bill before it's even been drafted, and especially in the middle of a leadership race?
Well, she was asked unprompted questions by media, and I think she gave general answers about her duties as Lieutenant Governor, that if she faces something problematic, she would take on expert advice and consider all the constitutional principles. So I think she was trying to deflect and say that as the Lieutenant Governor, she has responsibilities, and she would exercise them thoughtfully.
Do you agree with her? Does she? I mean, what is the role of the Lieutenant Governor? Is she a rubber stamp, as a lot of people think, or should she be injecting herself into lawmaking in this province? She's not an elected representative.
Well, the Lieutenant Governor represents the Queen, and in our system of government, the Parliament, or in our case, the legislature, is made up of the elected members and the sovereign or the representative. So her office is part of the lawmaking process, and that was very clear here in Alberta in 1936, Shaye. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons we need to celebrate Alberta Day is to know our history. In 1936, the Aberhart government passed a bunch of flagrantly unconstitutional laws, mainly about pretending Alberta had power to print money, and the Lieutenant Governor did not grant them royal assent on the grounds that they were just flagrantly outside the constitutional authority of the province and the legislature, and that created a constitutional crisis. God forbid we should ever be in a situation like that again. That's why I spoke out in January and December about this cockamamie so-called Sovereignty Act. It's really the Anarchy Act, or as one conservative constitutional scholar puts it, the Alberta Suicide Act. It would put the Lieutenant Governor in a very awkward position for the legislature to pass a law saying that it will not enforce the laws. That is without precedent, at least in Canadian and perhaps in British parliamentary history. So, and it would also send a devastating message about investor confidence in the province. I just came off a investor trip to Korea, talking to multi-billion-dollar funds about bringing money to this province to create jobs. And if the legislature passes a law, or the government proposes one, saying that we will rip up contracts, we won't enforce court orders, we'll ignore the rulings of the Supreme Court, we'll choose which laws we enforce, we'll ignore the Constitution, well, what investor in their right mind would put money at risk in Alberta, who would enter an agreement with the government of Alberta? So this is a very serious problem, and it wasn't created by the Lieutenant Governor, but by people who are proposing that the lawmaking body should in fact break the law.
If we're talking about how inappropriate it is for the Lieutenant Governor to speak on this issue, what about you? Is it not incredibly inappropriate for the sitting Premier, who's on the way out? I mean, it's a lame duck administration. As you know, you're gone October 6th, to be injecting yourself. And I mean, you're attacking the primary platform plank of one of the front runners in the leadership race. Is that something you should be doing in your capacity in the role you're filling right now?
So, Shaye, I continue to speak to important issues on this particular one. This thing was proposed in September of last year. I was asked to comment on it several times in public. I did so. I'm simply repeating now what I said then, long before there was a leadership campaign or any particular leadership campaign made it part of their campaign. So, I continue to stand for my convictions that I have for my entire life in public, my entire time in public life. One of them, Shaye, is the rule of law. And one of them is the need to grow Alberta's economy and create jobs. That means investor confidence. So I will continue to say what I've said for months about this, long before the leadership campaign, that we need to focus on jobs and the economy, getting pipelines built. If provinces start deciding which federal laws they enforce and which they ignore, that's a message to BC to ignore the ruling of the Supreme Court of Canada on approving the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. And so that's why I call it the Anarchy Act. It's exactly what I said about this in January, and my position hasn't changed.
Couple of other issues, if I can squeeze them in. This massive surplus we're dealing with, more than $13 billion. You announced that you're going to re-index income tax to inflation. A lot of Albertans pleased about that, but you're not re-indexing AISH. And a lot of people very upset about that. Why not? Why would you not re-index AISH to inflation and, provide that kind of relief for the most vulnerable in our society?
Well, first of all, AISH was created in the mid-'80s. It was never indexed through its entire history until, I think 3 months in 2019. It goes up periodically when there are adjustments, and I'm sure that will happen at some point in the future. It is 40% more generous than the next most generous assistance program for persons with disabilities. And we also have a very generous system which allows folks on AISH to make earned income without it being deducted from their payments. And many of those folks also receive other social benefits, including subsidized housing, federal benefits, and the like. So, look, the reality is that we didn't want to de-index the tax code, the tax brackets, but we had to take some fiscal action to avoid the healthcare cuts and to get our province's finances back in order. We promised that as soon as that we had done so, we would restore indexation of the personal income tax system. That's exactly what we're doing.
Last one here before I let you go. With the fact that you're no longer going to be premier within a month, how cognizant are you of the fact that the things that you're saying, the things that you're doing, the things that you're deciding in the coming days and weeks and the ones this week, you're sort of going to be handing that to whoever becomes leader of the province and sort of dictating some of the direction that they have to try and navigate? Would it not be better to stand back, be that placeholder that typically happens in this situation, and allow them to chart their own course free of whatever happens in the meantime?
Well, Shaye, I was elected as the leader of a party with the largest number of votes in Alberta electoral history, over 1 million votes for the first time ever, with a very specific mandate, and I continue to implement that mandate. We are keeping our commitments. We committed to restore indexation as soon as we had the province's finances on a solid footing. That's what's happened. On that case, for example, if we had not acted on this now, we need to give Ottawa several months' notice in order to retool the tax collection, the rates that they will apply for the current tax year. So there are certain things we simply have to do now, and I just continue to get the job done. Being in Korea, for example, to promote investment in Alberta is doing exactly what I should be doing, using my connections and position to promote the best interests of Alberta.
Premier Kenney, as always, I thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shaye.
That is Premier Jason Kenney, and as we said, he's Premier until October 6th. And what happens in the meantime will be interesting, of course, and closely watched. The ballots, interestingly enough, go out today, I believe. So if you are one of the 100,000 plus UCP members who are planning to vote in this leadership race, you should be receiving your ballots soon, and they have to be returned by October 3rd. And there's also in-person voting happening on October 6th. There's definitely legitimate questions there about the appropriateness of people getting involved in this race that could skew it. However, I think bottom line is, when you have the Lieutenant Governor jumping in and talking about the Sovereignty Act and saying they're not sure it's constitutional and they would seek outside advice before they agreed to sign it, that plays exactly into the people who want to see a Sovereignty Act, right? That's what it is. It's the elites. It's Ottawa. Who, she's appointed by the Prime Minister. That's what it is. It's them stifling Alberta once again. So it might actually help more than it hurts. But that remains to be seen. Quick break, and we're back right after the 9:30 news.
Can you feel it? Alberta is buzzing. All across our province, Albertans are innovating, creating new technologies and products like never before, attracting investment, developing talent, and scaling